Our next guest is sharing a deeply personal journey through history, family, and remembrance. In her new memoir, A Place for What We Lose, A Daughter's Return to Tule Lake, Tacoma writer Tamiko Nimura draws from her late father's unpublished writings and her own return to Japanese internment camp where her family was imprisoned. She weaves together questions of grief, identity, and resilience, and she joins me now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to just get right into it. What first inspired you to write A Place for What We Lose?
Well, I'd always had this unpublished manuscript of my father's since I was a child, actually, and it only became a few decades later that I discovered I wanted to, I was going through a difficult time and I wanted to hear his voice again. He passed away when I was 10, so I was really missing having a father. I was losing my job, and I really wanted some really, extended time of conversation with him.
And you brought some of this right here. I mean, this is heavy, like you said.
It is heavy, yeah. It's my working copy, so not the original.
Oh my gosh. And it began, like you said, with your father's unpublished memoir. What was it like reading a lot of these pages for the first time?
Yeah, I read them when I was a child, actually. When he was still alive, he gave them to me to read, I think as a way to start talking about, the incarceration. But I was a child, so I didn't really know what to think of them. So I think I said something silly, like I liked the book. But when I reread them, it was quite breathtaking to look back at him looking back on his story and telling as much of it as he could.
Definitely. And did you learn anything about your father that really surprised you through the research and your writing?
Yeah, lots of things. There were things like, he proposed to my mother twice, which is a fun story.
Fun little tidbit.
Yeah, but I think for me the most important thing is that I learned that part of him never quite left Tule Lake. And so I hope that readers will come along to find out what that looked like for him.
Many families have stories that aren't fully told. What did you discover about the power and the cost of silence?
In my family, actually, there was a lot of conversation about the incarceration. So I didn't necessarily see the impact of silence for my own family, but I do feel that in the larger community that there are lots of people who went to their graves never talking about the incarceration, or that they really said just a very little bit at the end. I do think that not talking about the incarceration had a lot of intergenerational impacts and trauma, health-wise, psychologically, and so on. So to tell this story, I think, is still something that's really important today.
It is important for sure. And I understand you also learned a lot about your grandfather, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, my grandfather was actually a dissident. He was the first Issei, first generation Japanese American to be arrested from within Tule Lake. So a lot of folks were arrested before the mass incarceration, but my grandfather was arrested from within for exercising his free speech and trying to talk to the younger folks about the costs of signing a particular questionnaire.
Did you find a lot of this out while going through the reading, or did your dad tell you about this?
So he actually did talk about it in the book, but he did not quite know the reasons for his father's arrest. And so I actually requested my grandfather's files from the National Archives, which are imperiled as we speak, got 200 pages of his files to find out just how quickly the government made a case against him and whisked him away very quickly to several different other places of imprisonment.
That's got to be so interesting and feeling so close to family to be able to read through and really see what happened.
It really was.
For viewers who may not know much too about Tule Lake, why is it such an important place in American history?
It is a place that became the largest population-wise of the 10 major concentration camps. It became known as the place for dissidents and troublemakers, resistors. It's the place where Japanese Americans who answered no to two particular questions about loyalty and military service were sent. And so it really is a place of resistance.
And you returned there, I understand, right?
I did.
How was that experience?
Oh, it was incredibly transformative. I thought it was going to be this place where I would just take notes, right? But I ended up having this huge cathartic breakthrough on pilgrimage that I talk about in this book.
And why do you think these stories still matter and should be told today?
Thank you for asking that. These are times of xenophobia, mass incarceration, deportation, kidnappings, attacks on our civil liberties and our civil rights and free speech. It's a time for solidarity, and I hope that this story can help with building that kind of relationship.
Beautifully said. Where can people get this book? And it's not your first either.
It's not.
You've written several.
Yes. You can buy it wherever books are sold. One of my favorite places is King's Books in my hometown of Tacoma.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Tamiko will be at the Tacoma Obone Festival on August 1st for a book signing with King's Books, and at the Puget Sound Book Festival in Bremerton on August 9th.